Deputy President Paul Mashatile's office has described an attack on civilians by his bodyguards as unnecessary. This follows a video showing VIP Protection Unit members assaulting 3 people on the N1 highway in Johannesburg. The Deputy President has since confirmed that the police officers are in fact attached to his office. Let's unpack this now. Bring in Willem Els, who's with the Institute for Security Studies and joins us via our video link this morning. Great to see you as always, sir. Thanks as always for making time. I mean, when you witnessed what happened, I wonder what kind of security-related questions came up for you.
Good morning to you. Yeah, it was quite a disturbing video to observe. And, the first thing that came to mind, those people are, in the first place, apart from being protectors and close protectors of the president or the vice president, they are police officers. And we see that studies have shown in recent months that the trust in the police is almost at zero with the public of South Africa. And that just contributed to that perception of the police, of the public, of the police that is completely incompetent and that is also out of hand.
Yeah, I mean, this use of brute force is sadly a language that we recognize in this country, not only because of our history, but as you mentioned, because of how in some instances police respond to civilians. There's other concerns about the chilling effect this will have if anybody else sees any kind of blue light convoy and how they might respond on the road.
That is correct. Your challenge that you have, over the past 5 years, civil claims because of misconduct by police officers rose to 2.3 billion rand. And that money could have been used to combat crime and to investigate crime. And that is just an indication. The past 5 years, those police misconduct cases rose by 52%. So that is really, it's a management problem that we have in the country with the police, where things are really getting out of hand. You mentioned the blue light brigades. Those people that traveled, indications are that the principal or the vice president was not in the convoy. They completely overstepped their powers. They took law into their own hands, and they committed heinous crimes in the face of the public. When you push just your normal traffic and people commuting on the road, off the road, because you feel that you are more important than them, and then if they do not adhere to your bullying tactics, you pull them over and you threaten them with not only side weapons but also assault weapons, and then assaulting them. It is appalling. Yeah. This is something that needs to be addressed as a matter of great urgency on the highest level.
Sure. It's interesting you refer to this as bullying tactics, because there is an expectation that if there is this kind of convoy, us mere mortals should step aside, so to speak. What does the law actually allow or permit some of these officials who are part of these VIP protection units to do, and when can we confidently say they've crossed the line?
Okay, you must just understand one thing, that those vehicles, even if they are classified, and we don't know if they are classified as emergency vehicles, but because they are police vehicles and they are allowed to carry blue lights, they are regarded as to be emergency vehicles. Now, in terms of the law, the police may only exceed the powers or break the law in terms of your bylaws and your traffic laws in an emergency situation. So, for instance, an ambulance may not just drive up and down the street at ultra-high speeds with their red lights on if it's not an emergency, and the same for the police. So, what happened here, I doubt whether there was an emergency situation, because even if the principal is in that vehicle, what warrants it to be an emergency situation? And there they are breaking the law. There is no law that makes provision for these people to break the law.
Absolutely. Some former VIP protection officers have spoken to our colleagues in the industry, speaking about how sometimes it's actually the culture that cultivates this kind of behavior. The principals, for instance, are late for a meeting because they need to travel between cities, and they put pressure on some of these officials to essentially carry out what you referenced as bullying tactics. But of course, being late for a meeting is hardly an emergency.
You're so right. You know, in my career of 28 years in the police, I also spent my early days with VIP protection, and you know, back then the Minister of Police that I worked for at that stage, he had one driver and close protector that escorted him wherever he wanted to go, and he had to go whether it was official or unofficial to his constituency. And we were never allowed to even use the blue light that was in the booth. The minister refused that we use it because he said it was not an emergency situation. So even if this politician is late for a meeting, what warrants him? There's no law or there's no exemption in any law in South Africa that actually warrants for that. Secondly, whenever you have these protection levels for your VIPs and your principals, you know, that is normally what should be the case. Your threat levels based on a risk analysis, based on intelligence and so forth, will determine what your protection levels will be, and that will actually then warrant you to react and to react towards the threat level, and also how you're going to move around in the public. We understand that whenever a VIP convoy is static, it becomes a target, but that does not warrant for these type of actions, even if they are static under normal circumstances, because if the threat level is not of such an extent that it warrants for them to speed, why are they speeding?
Absolutely. You know, you've mentioned to us that civil claims, at least over the past 5 years or so, amount to about 2.3 billion rand. There's also been reflections about whether or not internal processes of the police can be trusted to ensure that there is there is accountability. Satisfactory accountability is what I'm looking for. How confident are you that if this is just left to an internal investigation, there will be justice?
Well, in the first place, the two questions. The first question that you ask is, how confident are we for that? You know, since in 2016, for instance, there were 4,500 disciplinary cases within the police, internal disciplinary cases. But we see that in 2022, that went down to 1,300. And we can't see that misconduct of the police has also gone down. So that just indicates to us that there is an internal problem in terms of dealing with misconduct. You know, in many cases, these policemen just get a slap on the wrist, and they get away with you know, the saying is, we say they get away with murder, and that should not be allowed. But in the second question there is, you know what we observed in this video was obviously some heinous crimes that have been committed, but obviously in terms of the law they are innocent until they have been found guilty. So the process of the law is that these victims have to now file complaints. Those complaints have to be investigated. The case docket has to go to the NPA, but also those perpetrators have to be arrested by the investigating officers. So you have two different systems here. Your one system is your internal system, where the disciplinary will have to be done, but also your external is your criminal law system, where the law has to take its course.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, people have been interested to find out who these officials are linked to, and I don't think that was just for mere gossip. You know, there's a real public interest argument to be made for finding out who they're attached to, because, you know, there's going to be real questions around what accountability looks like in this stage. If, in fact, we are able to determine that this behavior is a result of the pressure that these officials are faced with, it doesn't absolve them from it, but it certainly gives us important context. How much accountability should the principal take in that instance?
You know, accountability can never be delegated. You can delegate responsibility. So ultimately, they remain accountable for the actions of their members. So that on the one hand. We also see that as far back as 2 years ago, in Parliament, it came up where these blue light brigades were discussed, and also where the opposition party started to ask questions in terms of this protection of the VIPs, where we see that the budget is almost 2 billion rand then to protect close to 200 VIPs, and that is extremely excessive. And it's been addressed by the opposition parties, and we believe that Parliament, as our highest decision-making body, have to come out, and they have to address this.
Yeah. There are already calls to just do away with these kind of convoys altogether. I mean, I wonder what your expert opinion on that is, given the time you've given to studying how security and security risks actually work in this country.
Yeah, you know, one thing that we noticed is it seems that these convoys became a status symbol for politicians, and the better your security convoy, the higher the security alert around you, the more important you as a official become in your own eyes and also in the eyes of those around you, and that is just uncalled for. You know, your protection of VIPs, your protection of your president, your vice president, is extremely important. It remains the responsibility of the police, but that should be determined based on threat levels and on a risk analysis. And that is a risk analysis that should be done every day on a day-to-day basis, and it should develop. Should the risk increase, you increase your levels. Should it decrease, you decrease your levels.
Willem Els, great speaking to you on this Wednesday morning, sir. Thanks very much indeed for your time.